ladies and gentlemen. Last week, on February 18th, Prime Minister Netanyahu agreed to National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir's demand to limit the number of Muslim worshippers who will be permitted to access the Temple Mount, where the al-Aqsa Mosque is located. Al-Aqsa Mosque is the third most holy site for Muslims worldwide. A decision of this kind is explosive on all levels, one that has the potential to ignite violence on the ground and parallelly hurt relations with Qatar and Egypt in their efforts of trying to reach a hostage deal with Hamas as soon as possible. I'm Adi Kantor. In order to discuss this subject in depth, I'm joined with two experts on the field. My first guest is Professor Mohammed Wattad, a law school dean and from 2022 to 23 vice president for academic affairs at Zefat Academic College. He specializes in international and comparative criminal law and in the interaction between law and political science, and in issues concerning the Arab minority citizens of Israel. Professor Wattad is a visiting senior researcher at INSS, and earlier this week I recorded the talk with him in which we discussed the religious, cultural, and social aspects of the Muslim holiday and its meanings to worshippers worldwide. Right afterwards, we will be joined with Dr. Meir Elran here in the INSS studio, where we will discuss the national security aspects of the current tension. Here's the interview I recorded with Professor Wattad, please. Thank you very much, Mohammed, and a warm welcome to you.
My pleasure, Adi. Thank you for having me.
Mohammed, in the Israeli discourse at the moment, the holiday of Ramadan, this month is always somehow related to security issues, but we're talking about a holiday, a Muslim holiday, a month, which is very, very important. Its meaning is very, very important, of course, for Muslims worldwide. Maybe you can give us, first of all, the context about the holiday and its meaning. What is Ramadan? What does it mean for Muslims around the world?
Of course, truly presented by you at the Ramadan has been misrepresented and presented to the public as if it was the month of security danger, as a concept, which is not. Actually, the Ramadan is observed by Muslims worldwide as a month of prayer, reflection, and community. And Muslims devote more time to prayer and acts of charity, striving to improve their self-discipline, motivated by a religious hadith, and of course by principles enshrined deeply in the Quran. By vast majority, most Muslims in the world devote their time to pray in this month, even pray more than usually do in a daily basis, more than 5 times a day. And when they do that, they even are looking forward to do that in holy places such as al-Aqsa Mosque, which is third in its importance in the Muslim world. To that extent, it's of the utmost importance for them to have access to this holy place at Al-Aqsa in order to pray, particularly there. Actually, speaking of religious motivations and complying with the Quran, the orders. If you pray in a holy place such as the Al-Aqsa, you gain more benefits. If we speak of the charter of pluses and minuses in God's books, then you get more pluses. So to touch such an issue in a very sweeping way, arguably presented as being provocative toward the Muslim world in general, and in your very nice and good introduction, you missed Jordan. You did not mention Jordan. Jordan is perceived, according to Israeli law, as the legal guardian of al-Aqsa Mosque, and to that extent, it is very important to recall the important role that Jordan plays in this realm. And Jordan has cautioned Israel again and again, do not come close to al-Aqsa. Of course not during the month of Ramadan. I do want to remind the public as well to the fact that during Ramadan, during the month of Ramadan, there is one special, particularly holy night. It's called al-Qadr night, and this during that night, Muslim priors pray way more than they usually do. It is a kind of spiritual experience where people, you sit in the hands of God, rhetorically speaking, and worship God, think about God, some kind of self-censorship in this spiritual experience. And therefore, such very important, sensitive occasions, of course, holy occasions, should be directed and addressed accordingly, and they cannot be addressed only with the regular tools of criminal law or administrative law whatsoever.
Maybe you can give us a bit of information about what has been done each year. I mean, we are having this, not this exact talk, but each year, always before the month of Ramadan, there's this tension is climbing. What will be now with will Muslims gain access to the mountain or not? What is the status quo? What should be? What is the situation that should be? Because I remember also last year there were tensions 2 years ago, and of course, Guardian of the Wall. I mean, in the last years it was every year like this. So,
Right.
what should be the situation on the ground that is always each year violated by right-wing extremists?
Well, the default situation is that people should have free access to all places. This is part of the constitution apparatus of any democratic country, of course, including the state of Israel. And in that vein, it should be mentioned as well that it should be equal access, namely access to the Jews, access to the Muslims, access to the Christians. All citizens must be treated equally. Now, of course, there are public interests that should be guaranteed by the state. One of these public interests is state security. No one is willing to jeopardize Israel's security, of course, not after October 7th, with all it means to all of us. But at the same time, when it comes to public interest, you have to strike balances between, protecting public interest, be as important as they might be, and human rights, which also be
freedom of prayer,
of course, for the individuals to start with, but of course for the community. And we're not talking about any community. We are talking about the Muslim community. It is the largest community among the Arab citizens of the state of Israel. It is by far the largest majority of the Arab citizens of the state of Israel. It's almost 17 or 18% of the Arab minority in Israel. Now, if there is any intel about any security risks or any scenario that is about to be taken during the month of Ramadan by extremists who are willing, to take advantage, quote to quote, of this month in order to hurt innocents, then the police forces have, of course, all the legal tools to deal with this particular intel. But this is one thing.
And this is, by the way, being done in the cooperation between the Israeli authorities and the Jordanian authorities, right? On the mount.
Definitely.
On the mountain.
Definitely.
On Temple Mount, I mean, yeah.
That's true. But it comes here, it has become sensitive this year, particularly because of two issues. The first one, the inclusion of the Israeli Arabs, Muslim citizens, within this formula, as if the Israeli Arabs were about to impose security risks to Israel security. And, we have been all the time pressing the Israeli Arab citizens for their behavior during the recent days. I almost said, but this is the recent more than 100 days of war after October 7th, because we are talking about a national tragedy of all Israelis alike, Arabs and Jews. At the same time, and all of a sudden, the Minister of Interior Affairs and National Security, call it as you may call it, all of a sudden he speaks about the Israeli Arabs, the Israeli Muslims, as if they were a security risk to the state of Israel. And
but this is not new. We witnessed this also last year, and even before he became a minister, he was very much heard.
But now he's a minister, and it makes difference. I mean, people used to behave differently when they sit in an official office. When it comes to him, he's not doing so, and this is a bit shame and unfortunate.
But I think the problem is even bigger than this, because his prime minister is the one who's making the decision. Well, the decision was made by Netanyahu. The demand was given by Minister Brig, but the decision was done by Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Of course,
this year.
He's supposed to be responsible, as the leader of this
Yeah.
country, but we've seen that he's not even responsible for what happened on October 7th, not to mention of daily and ordinary decisions taken by this government. But the second issue here to be mentioned is the fact that this order by the government, by the minister himself, by the prime minister, is being very vague, very wide, very sweeping, treating, like a series of a large spectrum of ages as if they were part of this so-called danger to the security of the state. And therefore, and this is not how we work. I mean, every year we have this discussion concerning, any security risks to the state of Israel, of course, during sensitive occasions, sensitive periods of time. But when it comes to this kind of examination, you need to do that in an ad hoc manner, not in a vague and sweeping policy, which by the end of the day lead to nothing but to
more escalation, more anger, more rage.
Of course, and it's provocative. It's about provocation, and we don't want to see the consequences of such provocations.
But Mohammed, you said I'm very interesting from a legal perspective. So you're an expert in this. This decision doesn't come hand in hand with the Israeli law. Legally, is it possible to even go on with a decision like this legally?
Well, I think no, but we would know that afterwards. I mean, if the decision is to be exerted, then I guess there will be a petition to the Supreme Court of Israel, and then the Supreme Court of Israel will provide that it is unconstitutional because it's disproportionate.
Because of this tension between freedom of prayer and public interest.
We all know that constitutional rights are not absolute. That's clear cut to all of us. But at the same time, public interests are not absolute, and it's only a matter of a formula of balancing between the public interests and the human rights. And therefore, taking decisions such as the one that has been taken is basically not striking any balance, but rather taking one side, treating it as to be an absolute side, which is the public interest, and negating all the rights of not only of individuals, but of a whole community. And therefore, I do believe that the court will be holding such a decision to be unconstitutional. But I do hope that by the end of the day, this decision will be amended shortly before the court needs to intervene. Because once the court intervenes, then there will be arguments against the court, as if the court is, being too much active, and the court is judges are leftists, etc., etc. And we are really tired of these arguments.
Past year, from the whole year that we've been dealing with this, the reform issues. I'm asking myself whether we're not even in a too late situation, before it even reaches the court and its ruling against it. Maybe the damage has been already done. And Mohammed, I want to ask you if you can provide us a bit of from the voices within the Arab community, the Israeli Arab community. What was the reaction that you're hearing? From colleagues, from friends, from family? How did they react to this very dangerous decision by the cabinet?
Well, obviously, the Arab / Muslim community in Israel has not been surprised because of the identity of the Minister of National Security. I mean, he has been always provocative, and actually, this is more reasonable to anticipate such a decision by him rather than the opposite. And I've seen the TV reports and the media reports with the Arab public in Israel. They all hold the same voice as, this is discrimination, this is about racism, this is about unreasonableness, speaking of the reasonable principle that the Supreme Court
legally
remain.
I think Israelis forgot this word after October 7th. It was replaced
people are
by
irritated. People are irritated. They're upset. I mean, you're touching like the holiest possible thing for the Muslim community, and you do that, in a sweeping way without even considering any kind of balances, without even considering the feelings, the religious feelings of people, and especially in a state like the state of Israel, where we are very sensitive. I mean, even the Declaration of Independence has spoken of the freedom of religion, the freedom of exercise of religion, equal exercise of religion, especially in such a country. Such issues, it should be a taboo, and to treat it in a very humiliating way, in kind of subordinate way, it is in itself irritating.
And other reactions? I mean, it really, I think it ranges from anger to rage to you tell me.
Well, I don't want to think
not to provide the basic freedom, to go to to Temple Mount and pray. And I really wonder how people feel.
Well, there are two levels of thinking here. I've heard legal scholars speaking of the need to go to the court, to the Supreme Court of Israel, submit a petition, which is quite unique because the Arab minority in Israel, led by NGOs, leading NGOs such as Adala, have refrained constantly from going to court on this matter concerning East Jerusalem, concerning al-Aqsa Mosque, because it's a matter of state sovereignty, and it's a matter of diplomatic relations, and they don't want the court to intervene in such a holy sensitive issue. But when it comes to this particular issue, I've heard advocate Hassan Jabarin, Dr. Hassan Jabarin, who is I think the chairman of Adala, the NGO, speaking of the need to go to court in this particular occasion. That's one level. But the second level, the way people react. And, unfortunately, in our recent history, we have witnessed and experienced the events of May 2021. And actually, we've been shocked at that time, both Arabs and Jews, from that bad experience. No one is willing to be there. And it's not a matter of threat, God forbid, but it feels sometimes that with such provocations, things might lose control, and we might find ourselves in such an occasion, because people start thinking when it comes to holy issues, and they act intuitively, and no one is willing to be there. And therefore, he who is leading the country is the one who is responsible for actions, is the one responsible for decisions and for consequences. And it's better now than later for him to take control of the situation, make serious decisions, proportionate decisions, and make sure that at holy times people pray, people love, people think about peace, rather than thinking about forbidding things, preventing people from exercising their right, and of course, securing our lives. No one is willing to jeopardize his or her life. National security is of the utmost importance for Jews and Arabs alike. It is very important for Arabs as well. However, if there is any ad hoc threat to national security in Israel, this ad hoc threat should be treated in an ad hoc manner, not in a sweeping policy.
I fully agree. We see what's happening, by the way, in the social media already, the incitement. It's really, really alarming, I think, what is happening there on these issues, and on other security aspects of the growing escalation and tensions. We will talk with Dr. Meir Elran right after this talk. So Mohammed Wattad, Professor Mohammed Wattad, I really want to thank you for elaborating on the religious and also social aspects and cultural aspects of this holiday, its meaning to Muslims around the world. And from this point, we will move now to the national security aspects. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We are now back in the studio and wish to discuss the security aspects of current tension surrounding Ramadan. And joining me for this mission is retired Brigadier General Dr. Meir Elran, a senior researcher and director of the Domestic Research Cluster of INSS, which includes research programs for homeland security and resilience, the Arab citizens in Israel, society, military, and Israeli economics and national security. A warm welcome to you, Meir. Thank you very much for joining me in this talk.
Thanks for having me.
Meir, so what is the issue of Muslims praying in al-Aqsa? How has it become a security dilemma for the Israeli defense system? From praying in al-Aqsa to becoming a security dilemma, how did it become such a dilemma?
We are living now for almost 5 months since the outbreak of this war against Hamas in a completely different setting. So whatever happened in Israel in general, and with regard to the prayers in al-Aqsa before, is almost not relevant compared with what's happening right now. And I want to stress here that despite of the fact that we are usually focused on what's happening in the Gaza Strip, with one eye looking at the north to see what will be happening and what is happening presently against Hezbollah, basically, if you think about it, we are in a very, very serious conflict with the Palestinians in general, which is not necessarily limited to the military aspect. Even though everybody is focusing on the military aspects, the truth of the matter that we're talking about a national conflict that is involved with different kinds of issues. One of them, which is very, very important, is the religious conflict between us, the Palestinians, as being part of the Muslim world in general. And this is very important for us to stress and to understand when we look at this particular situation of al-Aqsa, which I want to say is not just an issue, a very, very important issue, but it's a core issue as far as our conflict with the Arabs in general and with the Palestinians in particular. And since we are talking about a convergence of military, political, cultural, and religious issues, when we talk about al-Aqsa, we have to understand we are talking about the key. One of the keys, basically the key to the convergence of all those aspects together.
Wasn't it always the case? Do you
Yes.
see any specificalities since the 7th of October?
We thought that we can ignore that. In fact, it was a major problem from the beginning, but it became much more so, or much more evident now. And I want to remind our audience that Hamas itself labeled this military initiative, terrorist initiative of theirs, to the deluge of al-Aqsa. Think about it. I mean, and this is very,
Alone
very
in the
meaningful.
name of
Exactly. But it's not just the name, it's the context. It's the philosophy behind it. It's not just yet another terrorist activity. It's a major step as far as Hamas is concerned, and it touches upon the convergence of all those issues that we were talking about, and this is why al-Aqsa by itself is so very important.
We got a glimpse of it, I think, in May 21 in Guardian of the Walls.
We did.
That Hamas became the guardian of Jerusalem in a way.
True. But still, we didn't understand it. We didn't grasp the severity of this issue as much as we needed to do. So that's one major issue. And there is another issue in the same context which I want to talk about right now, and this is our reference to the Arab citizens of Israel, the Palestinians in Israel. On one hand, they are part of the Palestinian people. On the other hand, they are citizens of the state of Israel, which is a Jewish state. So how do you bridge this gap? Well, let me remind ourselves that for, again, 143 days now, the Palestinian residents of Israel, citizens of Israel, have made a strategic decision. They are part of Israel, and they do not obey to the expectation of Hamas, explicitly, openly made in the beginning of the war, to join them in the war against...
To join the resistance. Yeah.
Exactly, to join the resistance. So
But
they
we
made
saw
a decision.
something else in 21. We did see, mixed cities in flames.
That's true. This is not the case
It's
right
not the case now, you say.
The attitude of restraint is overall all over the place, from the citizens themselves to their leaderships. So this is really a strategic decision that we have to take in very, very seriously. So they, again, are not only Palestinians. They are, first of all, Israelis, but they are not only Palestinians, but they're also Muslims. And when we deal with al-Aqsa is as important to them as a prayer
The right, it's
and the
basic
right for
right
them, exactly,
to go to Jerusalem,
exactly.
to the Temple
so
Mount.
this
and
is
pray.
why it's so important nowadays, because of the context that we are living in.
So the strategic decision that you said done by the Arabs and by the community not to be part of the Hamas resistance and was it lasted until last decision of Netanyahu, should I say maybe Ben Gvir himself, to limit the access of Palestinians and Arab Israelis in the Temple Mount. And until then, something changed at that moment, maybe from their perception. What were their reactions afterwards, from your view?
Let me put it this way. There are different reactions. They don't like it for sure. There's no doubt about that. Restrictions have happened also in the past, but again, my understanding is that since we are living in a completely different situation presently,
and context,
then their, let's say, negative attitude to this kind of a decision might have a more serious meaning or implications than was the case before. But still, I must tell you that I don't think that it will shatter their strategic decision. I don't think so. But let me put it this way. We have to understand that despite of the fact that the majority of the Arab Israeli citizens share the concept of integration and being part of the state of Israel, there are still quite an important number of them who can be labeled as radicals, extremists, who are not really in concert with the majority of these people. They are still very quiet. They have not made any,
it takes only one.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
but it
the
takes
problem.
very few, let's put it this way, to make a major difference.
Exactly.
And I'm very, very concerned about this minority within the Arab minority in Israel of radical extremists who might misunderstand the situation to the extent that they might come out with some activities,
we
remarks,
see it already online
statements,
right now in the social media.
Exactly, in the social
really
media and beyond, to sort of take advantage of this situation that
to inflame even more. Yeah.
In fact, exactly, because I think that for many of the Arabs, this decision of the government, by the way, which might still be amended one way or another, when things really happen.
But Meir, isn't it too late? Once it was said already. We all hope, of course, that in the right before on March 9th, the decision will be
Yes,
different.
it is,
but the damage has been done.
It is unfortunate enough as it is. But I think that if the restrictions will be lifted or amended in one way or another, I'm talking specifically about the Arab Israeli citizens, okay, this will be a good correction of the situation, and I hope that this happens. It can still be the case, by the way, because the decision is somewhat blurry. We don't know exactly what is going to happen, and I think that the important thing for me is to stress that as far as the Arabs are concerned here in Israel, our citizens, it is important for the government to understand that we have to respond to their strategic, positive, restraintful attitude. We have to
acknowledge it, first of all.
To acknowledge it and to appreciate that and to do something in order to sort of leverage.
That's exactly my next question, which will be the last in this talk. What should be the position of the Israeli government now, knowing that there are extremists, by the way, on both sides, but now also when discussing the Arab community, there are extremists who wish to inflame even more, who collaborate with Hamas, and this is exactly what they want to see. What should be the position of the government, the current government, to prevent this from happening and to ensure that the strategy of the Arab community, the liberal Arab community in Israel, remains what it was until now?
Well,
and it doesn't escalate.
There are two parts to my response to that. Number one, I hope that the decision about the restrictions pertaining to the Arab citizens of Israel will be changed. I'm not saying that I'm not suggesting that if there are indications that some people or groups are going to make troubles in the al-Aqsa, they will not be prohibited from going up the mount. This is not my position. Of course, it can and should be done. So one thing is to lift this overall decision as far as their Israeli citizens are concerned. And then number two, and perhaps more important, is to understand that the Arabs in Israel need now to have a reassurance on the part of the government and the state of Israel that their position, their strategy, is being appreciated, acknowledged, and reciprocated in practical manners. And this can still be done. Exactly. And this can still be done. And let me put it this way.
With the current government, with the Ben-Gvir sitting there and Smotrich.
It is very, very difficult. I understand that. But let me say that still as a hope, okay? A wish on my part. In two major aspects. Number one is the economic aspects. We have to continue the direction that was set up, by the way, by Prime Minister Netanyahu 5 years ago when he initiated the 5 years plan. That is already the second time to enhance the economic position of the Israeli Arabs. That is one thing, very, very important. And the second one is to deal more seriously with the crime and violence in the Arab community in Israel. If we do that, and we should do that irrespective of the problem of al-Aqsa, I think that this problem, this very severe problem, can be shelved until the next Ramadan.
Dr. Meir Elran, thank you very much for enlightening us with your knowledge and experience in this issue. Thank you, and thank you for our viewers. Thank you very much.